Hello, I'm Tyler Oakley here with 24 seconds of climate reality. Did you know the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is convening a climate summit in New York City next week that shines the spotlight on the climate issues that actually matter? It's an opportunity to create a strong global treaty by the end of 2015. And that's 24 seconds that can change the world.
What can change in a day? A solar array can power a community. A business can embrace clean technology. A nation can vote to reduce carbon pollution. Around the world, every day, people are taking action to fight climate change, enacting real solutions, and already seeing the benefits. Join us as we travel on a journey of progress around the world, exploring the path toward a better, cleaner future for all of us, and how you can help create it. What can change in a day? Our future. This is 24 Hours of Reality. 24 Reasons for Hope.
Hello, I'm Sarah Backhouse, here for this year's Climate Reality Project's final hour, our 24th and perhaps most important reason for hope. After years of being confronted with the evidence of carbon emissions and a changing climate, leaders and governments around the world have started taking notice and action. Slowly but surely, a global consensus for urgent solutions has been building. Thanks to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, world leaders are convening and working towards a strong climate agreement. We have a generational opportunity to fix the environment and our energy economy. Joining us now is one of the leaders who has made all of this possible. Please welcome former Vice President and founder of the Climate Reality Project, Al Gore.
Thank you again, Sarah. And ladies and gentlemen, it is with a lot of emotion that I welcome you to the 24th and final hour of this year's 24 Hours of Reality, 24 Reasons for Hope. And I'm going to get to the 24th reason for hope in just a moment. But thank you for participating and taking part in this and watching. Thanks to all of you who have signed up for a day of action. Thanks to all who have communicated with us through social media and by other means. This is really an inspiring event for me. And I'm so glad that we have had the opportunity to focus on all of the reasons for hope. You know, earlier this year, there was a scientific announcement that one of the big ice sheets, the one in West Antarctica, was collapsing and that it was irreversible. And some people at that time said, oh my goodness, what do we do now? It's irreversible. Well, that's the wrong reaction, because we have an opportunity to slow that down, and we have an opportunity to prevent other ice sheets from getting into that condition. And the same formula applies to a lot of the other dangers associated with the climate crisis. Some damage has been done, some regrettably will be irreversible, but we still have more than enough time, or I should perhaps say just enough time, to avoid the really cataclysmic damage that the scientists tell us would take place if we were not making such progress, and if we did not make more progress and move forward with a solution to the climate crisis. We've seen all these reasons for hope today. They're all real. And I want to move now to the 24th reason for hope. The individual and local and regional and national actions to solve the climate crisis are important. The business community's role, the investment community's role, all of the other things that are happening that are so encouraging, they're all important. But ultimately, nothing can take the place of a global agreement. And there are a lot of reasons for that. There is by nature, a global aspect to this problem. And so the solution has to be global. If the sources of pollution just move across national boundary lines, then that makes it harder. But if there is an agreement in the world community to approach this in the correct way, then we can solve it. Fortunately, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has made this issue a top priority for the entire world, and his leadership has been crucial and has come at a critical juncture as we work toward the treaty talks that will culminate in Paris in December of next year. So we're going to look at the road to Paris, but I want to say a word before that to those who have seen some of the efforts in the past to get a global agreement end in disappointment. Does that mean we should simply be discouraged and not invest hope in what is a very different process this time? Absolutely not. One of the great American poets of the 20th century was a businessman who became a poet during his business career. His name was Wallace Stevens. And he wrote a line of poetry that has a lot of meaning for me. Somebody reminded me of it not too long ago. He wrote these words: "After the last no comes a yes, and on that yes, the future world depends. Every major struggle for justice and social progress in the history of humankind has met with a lot of no's before the last no finally yielded to a yes. The struggles in the abolition movement, the struggles for civil rights, the struggles for women's suffrage, the struggles for equality of women, the struggles against apartheid in South Africa, the worldwide struggle to get some sense into the nuclear arms race when it seemed to be about to spiral out of control again, the struggle for fairness and justice and equality for the LGBT community. That struggle is making progress right now. And what a happy development that opinions have changed so dramatically, and we see another frontier of freedom and social justice crossed. This struggle to recognize the reality of the climate crisis and to come together with meaningful solutions is the greatest social movement in the history of the world. The future of our civilization depends upon it. And it's very fortunate indeed that we have all of these reasons for hope that are legitimate and real and represent meaningful progress. But ultimately, we are going to have a global agreement to solve a global crisis. When we put 98 million tons of global warming pollution into the atmosphere every single day, as if the atmosphere is an open sewer, that's wrong, and it has terrible consequences. And when it goes up into the atmosphere in one part of the world, it affects the entire world. So we do need a global agreement. Now, here are a lot of things we have going for us. Both the United States and China, the two biggest global warming polluters, are now beginning to work together in a meaningful way to come up with a solution that they can both live with and then the rest of the world can live with. Here's an interesting fact that a lot of people overlook in this. The world trading system is set by the World Trade Organization, the WTO. Here's why I bring that up. Some people have argued that if the United States, for example, or any single country takes steps to reduce global warming pollution, that might somehow put them at a disadvantage with their trading partners. Not so, because under the rules of the World Trade Organization, a carbon tax or an indirect fee on carbon can be collected at the border from other countries that have not taken the same kinds of steps in their own country. So there is no competitive disadvantage whatsoever. Second implication is this: if the two largest economies in the world, the United States and China, reach an agreement and present it to the world, and they put these measures in place, and then any other country tries to trade with them, in short order, they're going to recognize that it just makes common sense for them to go ahead and reduce their carbon emissions with the same kind of measures so they'll be on an even footing. So once we get the ball rolling, and it is now moving, then we're going to see the momentum pick up. I'm very excited about that. I want to go straight to this 24th reason for hope. The UN Secretary General is convening this summit next Tuesday. The countries of the world are coming there. 162 world leaders and even countries that don't have their top person there are coming with significant announcements, and it's a very encouraging development. This summit is going to focus on 8 action areas. And we've talked about energy, we've talked about cities, we've talked about agriculture, we've talked about forests, we've talked about the other pollutants that are put into the air and the water and the soil along with the global warming pollution. We've talked about the financing and how that can get done, and the need for resilience to build in the ability to absorb some of the changes that cannot be stopped. We've talked about sustainable transportation and electric vehicles and mass transit, electric buses, and all the rest. All of these issues are going to be the subject of this UN special session next Tuesday. I want to take this opportunity to express my respect and thanks to Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, because he has made inspiring statements and has really provided leadership. He has also pointed out the solutions exist. We're already seeing dramatic changes. These are all positive signs. I'm excited about it. The race is on. And this report that just came out yesterday shows that all countries at every level of income, they all now have the opportunity to build lasting economic growth while they reduce the risk of climate change and reduce global warming pollution. We've seen cities do it. We've seen states do it. We've seen some countries do it. So this is the curtain raiser, this 24 hours event for the Climate Week here in New York City, and the Climate Group has long organized this. And I want to remind everyone that there is a very important march coming up this coming Sunday, which is billed as the largest climate march in history. A whole collection of environmental groups have joined together to join forces, and I hope that anybody listening and watching today who cares about the climate crisis will take the opportunity, if they can, to come and join the numbers that will be here in New York City. It is an extremely important event. So, where do we go from here? I mentioned at the beginning of this commentary that the process this time is different than before. Nations are going to make commitments, they're going to make pledges, and they're going to be judged by global public opinion. There are bilateral meetings and small group meetings to try to harmonize these commitments. But that's just this coming week. Next spring, early spring, in March rather, then the formal commitments will be publicly put on the table by all these countries. And then the negotiating process will begin in earnest between March and all through the rest of 2015, heading to Paris in December of 2015. I'm extremely optimistic. I think we are facing a very different situation. The climate-related extreme weather events have definitively answered the question in most people's minds that yes, this is not only real, it's the most serious challenge we've ever faced, and we have to address it. And the stunning technological and economic developments in solar energy, wind energy, efficiency, energy storage, smart grids, electric vehicles, all of the other reasons for hope that we've discussed during these last 24 hours have definitively answered the question, can we solve it? Yes, we can. Yes, we will. We have the tools we need. Where there is a way, there's a will. The question now is, now that there is a way, will there be a will? I think there is a will. We've seen the changes in public opinion. We've seen the leadership offered in all these different communities, including the faith community, in every denomination and in every religion. So all of these reasons for hope build powerful momentum toward the fulfillment of the promise of this 24th reason for hope, the climate summit and the global agreement next year, which will be the 24th reason for hope.
Thank you, Mr. Gore, not just for the last few minutes, but for your work here in the past 24 hours and all you do for mankind. Over the course of the day, we've learned that there's a lot to be hopeful about, but the fact is there's still a lot of work to do too. By coming together to make change, we can get our planet back on a sustainable course. Tens of thousands of people have already made the pledge to take a day of action this year, and right now we're asking you to join them. So while you watch, pledge a day of climate action, whether it's voting, marching, or speaking out in your community. Now, you may ask what can change in a day, but here's what I say, with a million standing up together, what can't be achieved? Go to 24hoursofreality.org to dedicate a day to climate action. Denial never solved anything, and it certainly won't solve the climate crisis. Climate change calls for the sorts of can-do spirit people have always turned to in times of great challenge. And that's why we're spending this 24 hours of reality focusing on the good news that solutions to climate crisis exist today, and where people are acting, we are seeing real progress. The fact is, we can solve the climate crisis. Let's take a look.
Carbon dioxide has reached levels not seen in millions of years.
Climate change is here and getting worse.
Extreme weather has wrought havoc all over the world.
It's happening here and now.
We are running out of
damage
time.
by the water.
So there's been a lot of news about climate change. A lot of bad news, that is. And for the good news?
Right.
Well, there hasn't really been any. Until recently. Today we're facing the hard truth of climate change with the stubborn relentlessness of human will. And good news is happening.
Right. And now for some good news.
Every day, new solutions are emerging. And not just wouldn't it be neat if solutions, real solutions. Our ability to convert sunshine into usable energy is rapidly becoming more advanced and accessible. Which is great because every hour the sun is sending enough raw energy to Earth to meet the entire world's energy demands for a full year. And the cost for clean energy technologies is dropping. Right now, the cost of solar energy is equal to or cheaper than fossil fuel energy in about 79 countries.
I didn't even know there were 79 countries.
And the electric car market is booming thanks to falling battery prices. And guess who likes that?
Who?
All types of people from around the world are starting to embrace renewable solutions. Schools are being powered by clean energy. Financial institutions are realizing dirty energy is a bad investment. And businesses are finding that going green is good for the bottom line. Which leads us to more good news. These solutions are actually working. It turns out that what is good for the environment is also good for the economy in many ways, like reducing poverty, spurring innovation, and creating jobs. In 2013, nearly 6.5 million people were employed globally by the renewable energy industry.
Job creation. Brilliant.
Right. And while other industries are shrinking, renewables are growing as new technologies and capabilities are being rapidly discovered.
And here's some more great news.
This groundswell of support for renewable energy is forcing leaders and governments to take action. The two biggest carbon emitters, China and the US, have made moves to curb their carbon pollution and invest in cleaner energy technologies. And they're not alone. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is convening nations to forge a climate treaty that could unify the world to work together and lower our carbon emissions, transitioning us to a global clean energy society. We all know the bad news. Climate change is here. It's big, it's bad, and it's hurting us and our economies. But the important thing to know is that there is also good news. We have solutions here today, not dreams or wishes, real-world solutions that are ready to go and that are already saving money and improving lives.
Everyone's a winner.
If we rally around this good news and embrace solutions, we can forge the path to a clean energy future and make sure that progress is our new reality.
That's good news. Thank you for watching.
of the biggest problems holding clean energy and climate solutions back was the collective action problem. So it's really inspiring to hear that there are fewer countries that want to be free riders as the opportunities and benefits of clean and sustainable energy become apparent. But still, it's surprising so many diverse cultures have been eager to get on board with the UN agreement. To learn more about the exciting developments going on in New York, we're joined by journalist Vanessa Hawke for our expert celebrity panel with former Vice President and Climate Reality Project Chairman Al Gore and winner of the Defense Distinguished Service Medal and a renowned expert in disaster response, Lieutenant General Russell Honore.
Well, thank you, Sarah. General Honore, thank you so much for making the trip up from Louisiana to join us for 24 Hours of Reality. And Sarah's talked about some of your distinguished honors, but I happen to be an Army veteran. I was an enlisted man, sir. So I know a little bit about what it means when I tell people that you were the 33rd Commanding General of the U.S. First Army, one of the most distinguished posts in the Army, because the first one to hold that post was Black Jack Pershing in World War I. And in World War II, the legendary General Omar Bradley held that post. So you had some pretty big boots to fill there. And then, of course, after your very distinguished combat career and Army career, you are known to many Americans primarily because of the way you took command of the chaotic situation in New Orleans in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. But now, maybe at a time when you were expecting retirement, I don't know, we haven't talked about that, but I know that some poor communities in Louisiana who trust you and believe in you, because they know you were what they described as the Category 5 general in the aftermath of that disaster, they called on you for help. And you have gotten involved in some environmental issues on behalf of poor communities. And sometimes when we talk about all these issues, it is especially important to get the perspective of poor communities, working communities who are dealing with environmental issues. And a lot of times people have the idea that if people in a poor working community have their jobs with one of these big polluters, then they're going to be timid about trying to get a solution to the environmental issues. Have you found that to be true?
Well, I think you framed the issue quite well, because the challenge we have is when we go after the polluters, meaning you walk out of your house, you smell something that's making you sick, or your water is colored, or it smells. When the local people in poor communities go to the government said, well, that's the price of a good economy.
Oh.
And that's what's happening in poor communities with a lot of emphasis right now where we're having a lot of extraction and growth in the industry along the Gulf Coast, in Texas, Oklahoma, and even in Pennsylvania, that people are asked to give up clean air for more energy that's produced, much of it for export. That being said, poor people, they take a hard hit anytime we do not follow the laws of the Clean Air Act. Every exception to the Clean Air Act is a direct response and assault on the health of poor people.
And they suffer more than people in other communities. And a lot of times, tell me if I'm wrong in believing this, the poor communities often are ones that have less political power, and they have not been able to defend themselves against the location of a heavily polluting industry in or adjacent to their neighborhoods, correct?
That is correct. We can go to Mossville, Louisiana, surrounded by 11 chemical plants, and South African Oil is about to build another plant there. There are no birds left in Mossville. The water is polluted, and people are celebrating the fact that they're getting another plant that will put 10 million pounds of pollutants in the air and 17 million gallons of hot water a day in the Calcasieu River. And it's celebrated by the city fathers because it's good for the economy. Yet we've got people in the community that are sick from the air, and there are no birds in Mossville. In St. Rose, Louisiana, right on the shadows of Narco, Louisiana, a place that's very a lot of people in the environmental community are very interested in and know about. We got the community of St. Rose, Louisiana. The people have been sick for the last 3 months, going to the doctor because they have eyes irritation, they're vomiting, they have trouble sleeping and living in the community, in the shadows of a plant. But you know what? The people of St. Rose are standing up. They formed as a group. They've petitioned the parish council. They've now retained some legal advice. And coming in October, if they don't get automated 21st century monitoring, you're talking about solutions, Mr. Gore, 21st century monitoring. We need that in fence line communities, because fence line communities, primarily poor people live in fence line communities. People with money move away. Fence line communities are primarily working poor people, and we need that. And they don't have that in Mossville, in St. Rose. And we've asked the people in St. Rose, have asked their parish for 24-hour air monitoring. The parish said we don't have the capacity. They defer to the state. The state says it's not a problem. They defer to the EPA. The EPA said we can't come in unless the state asked us. So the companies have literally hijacked the democracy.
Oh, now say that again. The companies have literally hijacked democracy. How'd they do that?
Through political donations and through lobbyists who help write the laws that give them exceptions and exemptions to the Clean Water Act. You know, even in the Gulf of Mexico, all the drilling that's going on, they're allowed to take the production water and put it directly into the ocean. If you drink that water, it'll kill you. If you put it on a plant, it'll kill it. If a fish swims in it, it'll kill them. They're allowed to do that today. It's an exception to the Clean Water Act. Throughout the Gulf, we're taking injection water and putting it back into the ground. That water will be dirty for at least 100 years. And it's full of all the bad things, lead, arsenic, and even diesel in some case. We saw a case in Louisiana this year where the industry wanted to make their fracking fluids a secret as a trade secret. The idea behind that is it was keep the competition from knowing what they're doing. Mr. Gore, don't hide behind that. What they want, they did not want people to know what's in that production because it poisons the water. So people are coming to believe in Louisiana that the only one that will save them is them.
Well,
because the democracy has been hijacked.
Well, it's a reason for hope that people who believe their employment is linked to these polluting industries are now willing to stand up and fight for a cleaner environment. And what I hear you saying is that there's a change in attitude and people are willing to stand up now.
Because people are relating it directly to the pollution in their community. Right here in New York, a major effort people are making to say, well, we don't want exploration in this county or this place.
Right.
Texas, the home of the big oil, people are standing up because they don't have water to drink anymore, Mr. Gore. Their wells have been contaminated. We're not making this up. This is fact. In Louisiana, go to a place like Bayou Corn, where a company got an exception to do exploration, and they broke a salt dome. It started off the size of a tennis court, is now 39 acres. Those families had to move.
39 acres, you're talking about a sinkhole.
A sinkhole, 39 acres, and those families had to move from their communities because that company destroyed something Mother Nature gave us. It will never be the same. We cannot continue at the pace we are going with the destruction we're doing to air and water and continue to have a sustainable planet.
Now, the only way we can fix this, and we're going to fix it. And now, first of all, this sinkhole, that's when they came and asked you for help, right?
That's right. That is the beginning of my involvement in the evolution of the Green Army.
Tell me about the Green Army.
The Green Army doesn't have an address, and it requires no membership or pledge other than the fact that we believe that we have a human right to clean air, clean water, and safe food. That no company is given an authority to threaten our way of life by poisoning our air and our water. The Green Army is about an idea. People in Texas have asked me in Port Arthur, one of the most polluted places in America, and people in Pennsylvania to come start a unit. I said, I don't need to come start a unit. I'm giving you an idea by empowering people to speak up. You start at the local level by basically telling your local government, we smell something in the air and it's having an impact on our health. And we want something changed. Because if you don't challenge it locally, nothing will happen. Because at the state level, literally, the big oil and gas own those legislatures in those producing states like Louisiana and Texas. They literally tell those legislators what to do. And we do get big help when people can't get reelected again. They will help us try to put a law through. But it started in Bayou Corn, a place that will never be the same.
Huh. Well, you're great to respond to the people when they ask for your help. I want to ask you a little bit more about what people can do when money has caused the hijacking of democracy, when the use of lobbyists, as you say, and campaign contributions and all these connections and the powers that are running the government are looking more to the oil and gas companies than they are to the welfare of the people they're supposed to represent. That's the situation I hear you describing.
Right. People need to go to their legislature.
Yeah.
We had a community, St. Bernard Parish, go to the legislature and ask for 21st century modern air monitoring because they live in the shadows of a refinery. 18-year-old boy lived 3 miles from that plant, testicular cancer, directly related to the air that he's breathing. We almost got that through a committee. Almost got it through a committee. And then the person from the state that's supposed to be protecting the people came up and said, well, if we make him put 21st century modern air monitoring, it will cost the companies money. So we're talking down to people like
Heaven
money
forbid.
is over their health, their profits. The other thing we're doing is Lake Panua, a small village outside of New Iberia, where 33 years ago, a salt dome collapsed and created a thing called Jefferson Island disaster. We went to the legislature. We got progress. Progress is being made. The people from that group, Lake Panua, petitioned the legislature. They said, we want an environmental impact statement and be able to negotiate when you do more extraction. We got progress. We got a law passed that allowed them to negotiate with the company to do an impact statement, because the state law said they don't have to do a statement. But we negotiated that through the legislature this year. So there is some progress, and it's people. When people act, when people stand up, and people understand, the only one going to save them is them.
Well, we've got to have that kind of determination in order to unleash the hope, and it's there, but people have got to reclaim the democracy. Now, let me ask you more broadly about the impact of oil and gas development. Of course, it's the leading cause of global warming, but as we have emphasized during this 24-hour event, there are collateral forms of pollution, some of which cause cancer in the community. One of those areas is referred to as Cancer Alley because of the prevalence of cancer. But we've also seen a big impact on the coast of southern Louisiana. When Hurricane Katrina came in and then Hurricane Rita hard on its heels, we saw a terrible impact, and there's been more since then. But it used to be years ago that the marshland and the mangroves and the natural barrier would protect the city a little bit more. What has the reckless development of oil and gas had to do with the new vulnerability of New Orleans?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because again, direct impact of the exploration business is they put canals in to do the exploration. Then they went back and they put a series of pipelines in to take that fuel out. When they signed the permit to put those projects in, they agreed that they would close those canals. We now have thousands of miles of canals throughout our wetlands in Louisiana that were left open. So as you get this rising sea, we're kind of like the proverbial canary in the coal mine as a lightning message to the world that this is what's going to happen. We're losing our coastline at an enormous rate because those canals were left open, and the saltwater intrusion in a place called Port-au-Chien, Louisiana, just south of Houma. 40 years ago, they used to have alligators. Today, they have sharks. And it's directly related to those canals that were left open that the Louisiana legislature, with exceptions given to them by the EPA and by the Corps of Engineers, to allow those canals to stay open, have allowed that saltwater intrusion, because that is not just Louisiana wetlands, that's America's wetlands. That's the largest, was the largest wetlands in America, and it feeds into the Gulf of Mexico. And I'm telling you, we need to take decisive action now to restore those wetlands, because it makes the impact of storms and has a large impact on the city of New Orleans, Plaquemine Parish, major polluting area, Lafourche Parish, major polluting area, Vermilion Parish, major polluting area. Those 3 parishes alone produce and export much of the energy that comes in and leave America to go all over the world. We have paid a price for this precious thing called energy and petrochemical that the rest of the world needs. Now we need the rest of the world to help us save the Gulf Coast of the United States.
And of course, this takes place also in an era of sea level rise. And in the southern coast of Louisiana, like around Galveston, you have not only sea level rise, but the land is subsiding, partly because of the oil and gas production, correct?
That is correct. And when that happens, we lose the vegetation. When we lose the vegetation, we leave that remaining soil, and it changes a place where 34% of our seafood come from. So this has an impact on our seafood, as well as the impact on the impact of the hurricanes coming in, because we no longer have the marsh to absorb that initial energy of the hurricanes. This is having a dramatic impact on our, and okay, the Gulf Coast is a destination for a lot of people. 15% of the income in Louisiana is from tourism. So it just doesn't impact people who live in the marsh, it impacts the potential impact on the tourism industry, primarily in New Orleans, Louisiana, because we see now by models over the years that if we don't do something to protect the wetlands, the coastline will be to the city of New Orleans.
Well, I've seen some maps and some projections that look pretty scary. But to bring the focus back to where we find hope in all of this, in order to solve the climate crisis, and in order to solve these terrible environmental problems that go along with it, with the cancer-causing air pollution, the subsiding of the land, the destruction of the wetlands, and when you say the salt water is invading, that affects people's drinking water in many areas along the coast, doesn't it? That invades the drinking water supply.
It has the potential to do that because the city of New Orleans actually drink water out of the Mississippi River. But we're having a saltwater intrusion in our aquifers as far north as Baton Rouge, where 2 companies, Exxon and Georgia Pacific, use $66 billion of aquifer water, million gallons of aquifer water a day, thereby reducing the health of the aquifer, and saltwater intrusion is going into Baton Rouge, Louisiana, because those 2 companies refuse to use river water. Now, across the river, Dow use river water, Shell use river water. They do it because of the power they have, Mr. Gore, over the government, because they say, well, you want clean water today, tomorrow you're gonna ask for clean air.
Yeah, you said in a speech last week that the Exxon flag flies over the state capitol.
It rotates between Exxon, Texaco, and Chevron, and Conoco. But their flags fly over the state. And I say that we realize that we got here today because of the work they do. We need fuel in that form still to do what we do. But we need to transition from that. We only need to look at the impact of what's going on in the Mississippi River Valley and the estuaries along the coast to see that this is having a major impact. But the biggest insult to a democracy is to watch the lobbyists hand a piece of paper to a legislature and tell them what way to vote. And just look into Washington and see the impact that they have declared exceptions to the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act is one of the most important acts ever passed by our government to ensure that people would have a right to clean air. And ever since it's been written, every year more exceptions are given in the form of it's good for the economy.
My predecessor in the United States Senate from the state of Tennessee, a Republican named Howard Baker, was the co-sponsor of that Clean Air Act. Ed Muskie, senator from Maine, was the sponsor. Richard Nixon was the president, Republican president. It was completely bipartisan, very few votes against it. But we have seen this power in the hands of the petroleum and coal and gas industry work its will on our democracy. You say hijack. It's happened in Washington, D.C. too, particularly in the Congress. And so in the time we have remaining, how can the Green Army and how can you, as a man who is admired as a leader, help to rally these people who are ready to stand up to them and take our democracy back?
Well, we have a big event coming up this weekend. Wherever
That's right.
you are, you ought to participate.
Good.
Again, the only one going to save us is us.
Good.
And the government does listen when the people speak. We've had great transformation in our lifetime.
Good.
You can mention many of them. You can mention the desegregation issues. You can mention stop smoking campaigns. All of those have caused a cultural shift.
Yeah.
I think it's time that we accept this cultural shift, that the things that are polluting our air, we need to find a way from not using that at the rate we're using now. We need to wean ourselves off this pollution-based energy source. Number two, we need to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
We need to look at things that have a profound impact, like styrofoam, plastic bags. You mentioned cities earlier. Cities are taking decisive actions.
Yeah.
And they're doing it now. They're not waiting. They're not deferring. They're not further studying. Every time we raise the issue in Louisiana, well, let's study it some more. And let's study the impact on the economy. Look, we're the third largest energy producer. We're the second poorest state. Making money doesn't ensure that everybody get to participate in that economy. And it's primarily those companies that shape the policies that prevent everybody from participating in the economy. So I think people need to act, think globally, act locally. Think globally about climate change, but act locally on pollution, because the pollution you stop will also have a major impact on our climate overall.
Well, I'll tell you what, closing this out, we started with an agenda of 24 reasons for hope. I didn't expect to be saying at the end of this interview that there is now a 25th reason for hope, and it's General Russell Honore. And I am inspired by you. We at Climate Reality would like to work with you and the Green Army. We need to take our democracy back, and this new expression of will to do so and to say the power of money controlling democracy is not going to be the end of the story. The people ultimately can reclaim our democracy, and we want to work with you to do it, John.
3 points. We need to do the routine things well. Don't be afraid to do the impossible, and don't be afraid to act even if you're being criticized. Learn that from my public school teacher.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 25th reason for hope. Russell Honore. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you to our leader, Al Gore, and General for that great information. And now let's turn to our series Youth Fuel from millennial documentary filmmaker Vanessa Black, who has partnered with the Climate Reality Project to ask some tough questions of major carbon polluters and climate deniers around the country. In this episode, she travels to St. Louis, Missouri, home of Peabody Coal, the largest private sector coal company in the United States, whose coal fuels about 10% of the electricity in the nation. The coal industry has claimed that renewable energy is a job killer and that it has the potential to devastate local economies that currently rely on coal. But is that really the case? In this film, we take a close look at those jobs and learn what has really contributed to their decline over the past several decades. It's safe to say that the finger isn't pointing at the clean energy sector. Meanwhile, coal may be cheap, but it turns out we aren't really paying the full price when you take into account the cost of carbon pollution that's spilling into the atmosphere. Does it really make sense to keep relying on a dirty fossil fuel when clean energy can provide clean jobs? And who should pay the price for the cost of carbon pollution? Take a look and decide for yourself.
Here we are in St. Louis, Missouri, home to Peabody Energy's headquarters, the largest private sector coal company in the world. Since its founding, Peabody has been responsible for 1% of all anthropogenic carbon emissions. We know burning coal is bad for the environment, and we should look for other resources. But coal argues that renewables would create a job-killing nightmare.
I worked at a coal mine who in 26 years hadn't had a single layoff. In the past 4 years, we've been laid off twice.
It was really devastating to us because we had just had a baby and we've pretty well had to use our savings to live on.
Would alternative energy really kill coal jobs? In this episode of Youth Fuel, we travel to St. Louis to find out. I'm Vanessa Black. I'm a filmmaker and an activist, and I'm traveling around America to find out more about our biggest polluters and climate change deniers. Have you ever heard of Peabody Energy before?
No.
No? Do you know anything about Peabody Energy? No. Peabody Energy?
I heard about the coal stuff.
Yeah, what do you know about them?
I do not know too much or nothing about them now.
Although you may never have heard of them, Peabody has some of the largest coal reserves in the United States.
Across the globe, every man, woman, and child uses 1 ton of coal each year, and Peabody has some 8 billion tons of coal reserve.
And it's a worldwide operation that has no plans to stop mining coal anytime soon.
It is here to stay, and it will continue to grow.
As a single company, Peabody's coal fuels approximately 10% of the electricity generated in the United States and 2% of electricity generated throughout the world. Global coal demand is expected to reach 8.5 billion metric tons by 2016. If many scientists around the world agree that we should stop using coal to combat climate change, then how do we keep these companies from expanding? One idea from Citizen Climate Lobby is to tax carbon.
Revenue neutral carbon tax that taxes the carbon emissions and gives the money back to the public to offset the increased costs in consumer goods and energy. Coal seems cheap, oil seems cheap, but it's not really cheap because there are all of these costs that go along with it that we end up paying for in other ways.
Coal says the carbon tax will kill American jobs.
My husband has been a coal miner since 1994. In the past 6 years, my husband has been laid off 3 times.
When in reality, better mining technologies and competition from natural gas kill coal jobs. Peabody's CEO even said it himself at an energy conference.
We're going to see more and more autonomous systems for the production of whether it's coal or other mineral commodities or oil or gas to try and minimize that human interface.
The fact is, U.S. coal mining jobs have been in decline for decades. According to the U.S. Mine Safety and Health Administration, from 1978 to 2013, the U.S. lost more than 132,000 coal jobs, which is 52% of its workforce. Coal says taxing carbon would cut jobs. However, they're clearly making plans to make coal mining more efficient through newer technologies. They're also looking for other ways to save. Creditors allege that Peabody arranged to cut health care benefits to retirees.
United Mine Workers of America presses on in the union's attempts to pressure coal companies over the payment of retirement benefits.
My father gave nearly 3 decades of his life to the coal companies, to Peabody, with the promise that his retirement would be secure. Now my parents are facing the reality and the fear that they may lose the ability to afford going to the doctor while CEOs like Greg Boyce continue to gamble with the lives of thousands of his employees and millions of innocent people.
The fact is, many of these miners work their whole lives for the coal industry and their health suffers for it. We know coal is dirty, but coal argues that they can make it clean.
We can be energy independent. We can continue to use our most abundant fuel cleanly and responsibly. We can, we will. Clean coal, America's power.
How many kilowatts have been derived from clean coal? 0. Clean coal is a marketing term used by the coal industry. It relies on unproven technologies in a desperate and expensive attempt to avoid using truly clean, renewable energy. Until we use renewables, coal will continue to cost us.
We all pay for those costs one way or another, whether it's in our health bills or, the pollution in the environment, dirty water, dirty air. We pay for those costs. It's just not reflected in the price of the things that are directly related to energy.
By burning coal, we pump the atmosphere full of unsustainable amounts of greenhouse gases that affect people and the environment. Peabody will argue that they can make coal clean, but the technologies are unproven at the commercial scale. Therefore, we must move to renewables, and it won't cost America jobs. Join the growing movement to solve the climate crisis and fuel a cleaner future.
These 24 hours have been full of powerful conversations and short films like the one we just saw. But we've also found time to feature performances from musicians who support this great cause. And now, a group with close ties to the Climate Reality Project performing What I've Done. This is Linkin Park. As we near the end of our show, remember that you can see all the highlights from 24 Hours of Reality starting later today at 24hoursofreality.org. As we spend the day looking at the solutions that exist to reduce carbon pollution and how they can benefit us all, some simple questions might come to mind, like why haven't we acted to solve climate change? Why not embrace clean, renewable energy? We think those questions are pretty great. And as the United Nations prepares to convene a special meeting of the world's leaders to collaborate on negotiating a new agreement that can ensure a clean energy future, it's the perfect time to pose some questions. And who is better at asking those simple but tough questions than children? The Climate Reality Project launched a campaign to hear from the world's young people in their own words. After all, they're the ones with the most to lose and the most to gain. So it's only natural they'd have a few pointed questions from their leaders. And after this inspiring compilation from young folks from around the world, we'll see a single submission from a future climate leader from the Philippines. Let's listen.
My name's Amy Farrah and I live in England.
Hi, I'm Aiden and I'm from Hong Kong.
Hi, my name's Molly and I live in Malaysia.
Hi, I am Mika from South Africa.
I live in Croatia.
I live in Auckland, New Zealand.
And I'm from Brazil.
Brazil.
From South Africa.
From France.
From the United States.
United States.
From Mongolia.
From Malaysia.
From Dubai.
From Romania.
From Mexico City.
From the Philippines.
From India. From India.
Western Australia.
So my question for all world leaders is this.
And my question to the government bodies is...
My question to the UN is...
And I guess the first thing I want to say... The first question I want to ask...
My question is...
My question...
My question...
My question...
My question...
I'd like to question...
I would like to ask...
I'm asking members of the UN...
Why do you sit here and pretend?
Why are we letting companies freely pollute the atmosphere?
Why are you allowing the palm oil industry to destroy Malaysian rainforests?
Why do global economic policies consistently stimulate and encourage reliance on burning fossil fuels?
Why is there no more emphasis on developing a generation who can take responsibility for the causes of climate change?
Why, in South Africa, a country overflowing with sunlight, don't we use solar panels?
Why not countries with similar consumption formulate region-specific laws and targets for the next decade?
Why not to put pressure on these companies to change their methods?
Why don't governments start creating sustainable modes of transport?
Para preservar o bem mais precioso que existe no planeta.
Why not change our focus, leave animosity and hatred and competition behind?
Why not incentivize people to use energy more efficiently?
Why not invest more resources in communities?
Why not strive to reduce carbon emissions?
Everyone has a stake in what happens to our planet.
The global problem requires a global solution.
It's time to act. So what are you waiting for?
Copenhagen, Denmark has ambitions to be carbon neutral by 2025. The capital of Denmark is taking the necessary measures like erecting wind farms to be able to achieve a zero carbon future. Hi, my name is Dana and I'm from the Philippines. And my question is, why can't all the other countries follow suit? Ambitions are for free, and although not all ambitions have concrete end results, an ambition like this is at least a start and a step towards the right direction. If it is a question of costs and unavailable resources, why not ask for help from the leaders sitting next to you or across from you? And conversely, if you're being asked for help, why not? Why not help a fellow leader who cares enough for his country and his world and is bold enough to seek your aid? At this point, I believe that we need all the help we can get from each other because the issue of global climate change cannot be solved by one country alone. So thank you.
Over the last 24 hours, we have traveled literally around the world, and we have seen the incredible progress being made by scientists, engineers, business people, governments, NGOs, and people just like you, all working to help solve the climate crisis. We've seen the progress and the hope. The tide is turning. We are now poised to begin to meaningfully solve the greatest challenge our civilization has ever faced. And the hard work does lie just ahead. When I first held congressional hearings on the climate crisis more than 35 years ago, scientists warned that if we continued to recklessly spew pollution into the atmosphere as if it's an open sewer, we would before long begin to witness the consequences of our actions in the form of stronger storms, bigger floods and mudslides, deeper and longer droughts, worsening fires, and hotter temperatures, spreading tropical diseases, melting ice, and rising seas. Today, some of those terrible consequences are now beginning to take place and take their toll across the globe. But we can still prevent the worst. But these consequences will worsen until we take more dramatic action. These signs of hope that we have been spending the last 24 hours reviewing and helping us to understand make me extremely hopeful. Yes, we have entered a period of consequences, but more importantly, we have now entered a period of hope, and we are going to solve this crisis. because as you have seen over the last 24 hours, the solutions to the climate crisis are here. They're available, from energy efficiency programs in the world's largest cities to consumers who are generating their own electricity with rooftop solar panels, from businesses who are incorporating climate impacts and factors into their bottom lines, to presidents and prime ministers and governors and mayors who know that climate action is crucial to their country's well-being. We now are beginning to take the right path. From cleaner air to protecting forests, from the turning tide of public opinion to the explosion of new jobs in renewable energy programs around the world, we are making real progress. Taken together, these factors and many more give me genuine and realistic hope that we really are finally on our way to eventually solving the climate crisis. But time is of the essence. So I'm happy about this 24-hour event. I want to take just a moment to thank Ken Berlin, the president and CEO of the Climate Reality Project, and all of the staff and team members of Climate Reality who have worked so hard. I want to thank Aaron Grosky and Kevin Wall and all of their colleagues at Control Room who put on this event, and all of the people behind the scenes who have helped to make it possible. I want to thank our hosts. I want to thank the performers who've given their time. I want to thank the guests who have made this event what it is. Thank you so much. And most of all, I want to thank the tens of millions of people who we now know with the numbers have watched and shared and participated in this event and have helped to spread our message of climate hope. We have to continue this momentum. It is our duty to act. We can never let despair win. We don't have time for it, and it's completely inappropriate. We are going to win this challenge. We cannot allow the pessimists and the deniers to have their day. We cannot turn away from this monumental task that lies right in front of us. We must move forward. And I can say to you today that there will be joy in the prevailing. I know that when I look at the progress we have made, we are going to go the distance. And it is progress, this transition toward a world powered by clean and sustainable energy. 100 years from now, when the history of this period is written, people will look back, and a future generation will ask of us back through the mists of time one of two questions. If we were not to prevail, and we're going to prevail, but if we were not to, and the terrible consequences the scientists have predicted created a world of despair where people looked at their children and just despaired that their lives were going to be worse still, that generation would be justified in asking of us, what were you thinking? Why didn't you act when the evidence was so clear and so convincing, and when Mother Nature herself was telling you it was time? Why didn't you do anything to halt the greatest threat humanity has ever faced? Or, in that future time, if that generation inherits a world of continued hope and dramatic progress, moving toward a sustainable future with millions of new jobs in renewable energy and efficiency and all of the new industries that are going to be created as we solve this crisis, I want them to look back at the year 2014 as the moment when the tide did turn, when the momentum changed, when people from all around the world rallied together to take a stand and chart a course forward for humanity on the road to Paris, and to meet in December of 2015 and reach an agreement, and then from there move onward to a future that is both sustainable and prosperous. It is time right now to solve the climate crisis once and for all. And in doing so, we can rise to meet the greatest challenge we have ever faced. It is a privilege to have work that is meaningful and consequential. And it is a privilege to join with all of you who have participated in this event, 24 Hours of Reality. Thank you. Let's get to work.